Discovered my boyfriend plans to propose soon, but his lack of affection and communication leaves me questioning our relationship's future. My boyfriend and I have been together for a very long time. We dated from the time we're 16 to 22. We then broke up for a while but got back together when we were 25. We are both 29 now. We live together and I know he's going to ask me to marry him soon, so I want to get my feelings in order before anything happens. I love him, I really do, but I feel sorta unloved. I know once couples become comfortable with each other and live together, the spark or whatever dies, but I don't like feeling like this. I still make an effort, I ask him how his day went, I'm affectionate, I put out so to speak. A thing that really bothers me is when I say something, a lot of the time, he ignores me. When I bring it up, he says that he didn't hear me or that he was busy. For example, I'll say, "Did you see there's going to be a strike tomorrow?" And I won't get a reply. I'll wait 10 seconds. Still no reply. Then I'll ask, "Hello? Did you hear what I said?" And he'll go or grunt in response. He does this often, just abrupt responses after ignoring me and me having to repeat myself. I'd understand if he did this if I was talking his ear off, but I'm not even a talkative person. Yet when he talks about anything, I pay attention, respond properly, validate his opinions and reassure him when he needs me to. Affection-wise, I always give him hugs and kisses. He hardly ever does this anymore without me asking. I compliment him and tell him that he looks handsome. He hasn't complimented me in any shape or form in probably over a year now that I think about it. I still look the same looks-wise, I haven't gained weight or anything, not that that's a reason to stop loving someone, but you know how some people are, so I don't know what changed. Have things just become stale? Is this what inevitably happens? This whole situation has been troubling me for a while, but I'm not sure what to do. Our anniversary is in 2 months' time and his sister accidentally let it slip that he's going to propose. If it weren't for that, I'd think that we've been together for too long and he's now sick of me. I tried talking to a few of my friends who are already married and all I got were varied versions of "that's how men are." He wasn't like this before. He would pay attention to me, talk to me, and overall I just felt more like, Now it just kind of feels one-sided. The one time I attempted to kind of bring it up, I opened with, "Do you still like me?" Because sometimes it doesn't really feel like it, and he replied with, "If I didn't like you, why would I be here?" I could tell it was going to end up in an argument, so I just let it go after that. How do I handle this situation? I want to bring it up with him, but I don't know how to do it. I guess I'm not really good at articulating how I feel. Or should I not say anything because this is just the way relationships go? Please advise me because I'm a little lost. TL, Doctor, my BF and I have dated for over 10 years altogether. He is going to propose soon, but I'm not completely happy as I feel unloved. He's somewhat abrupt and not affectionate anymore, and it's making me question whether things aren't ideal or whether it's a normal aging relationship. Update 1. I thought I'd provide an update. Thank you all for the advice, I appreciate it. So the day after I posted here, I talked to him. I told him that I feel a bit disconnected and I'd like it if he paid more attention to me and talked to me a little more. He just said okay, but I could tell that he wasn't interested. The next day, there was no change and I was a bit annoyed, so I spoke to him again. I said that I'm starting to feel lonely in the relationship and I feel like he ignores me and isn't affectionate as he used to be before. But all he said was that he didn't want to talk about it. I said that it was important and that I might want to end things if we can't talk about this. Only then did he actually pay attention. He said that he ignores me because he's tired. I understand that work is tiring, but he practically ignores me all the time. And as far as the affection and attention, he said, "I don't know. Things just change, I explained that I understood all of that, but I needed more, that maybe it was unreasonable for me to want that and maybe the type of relationship I want doesn't exist, but I would not be happy in this relationship if things stayed this way. He then said, he'd try more, that he'd hug me every morning before work, try to respond more when I spoke and give me a compliment now and then. I didn't like how it felt like a list of chores he had to do, but at least he was willing to try, so I agreed. I also asked if there was anything I could work on for him, but he said there was nothing he could think of. By the end of the first week he already seemed annoyed with the hugging. He'd let out a big sigh and it seemed like he was doing it begrudgingly. This felt awful for me, like I'm forcing this man to give me a crumb of affection. But at least he was doing it, I guessed. My breaking point happened last weekend when we were getting ready to go to a party. It was his friend's party and it was a fancy affair, so I had to get really dressed up. His niece and her BF were also going but came to our place because she needed help with her hair. She has gorgeous butt-length hair and wanted to curl it. As soon as her BF saw her after getting ready, he said, "Wow. You look so beautiful. You look like a mermaid," and hugged her. No prompting, no asking, he just did it. That's when my BF called me aside and said, "I guess I have to compliment you now, right?" That was it for me. I said that I was feeling sick and needed to go to the bathroom. We were all supposed to leave together, but I stalled for a few minutes and told them I was sorry and they should leave, and if when I felt better, we'd meet them there. As soon as they left, I spoke to him. I said that I was sorry I wasted his time and I was so sorry that I didn't notice all of this sooner. I said that I appreciate his effort, and even though he was doing what I asked, it was not enough for me. I don't want to feel like a chore for someone. I understand that the honeymoon period / puppy love thing doesn't last forever, but I want someone to just like me, To like me naturally and instinctively, as a person. After explaining that, I told him that I was sorry again and that I was ending things. He started freaking out and told me to think about it some more, but I was sure of my choice. He then said that he understands and he's sorry and asked if I would still go with him to the party as our last night out, and also because he was going to be embarrassed to go alone. I felt bad because I didn't mean to do this on this day and I didn't want to leave him hanging, so I agreed. I really didn't want to, but I went and we managed to keep up appearances. Then in the middle of dinner, he proposed. I was shocked. I didn't know what to do and felt trapped. I didn't want to embarrass him or myself, so I said yes. Everybody was congratulating us and I was in hell. It all felt so awful and it was difficult to not start crying out of frustration. In addition to us technically being broken up, he knows I hate being the center of attention in public like that. When we got home, I asked how he could do such a thing. How could he put me in such a terrible position? He said, I thought maybe proposing would change your mind. I said that it didn't and I just said yes because it would have been awkward if I hadn't. I gave him the ring back, packed some of my stuff and left. He was freaking out asking me what he was going to tell everyone, but I told him to say whatever he wants. That I changed my mind? I'm flaky? Whatever. I was emotionally exhausted and didn't care anymore. I feel awful and I wish I could have handled that whole situation better or smarter, but I panicked and now we're here. Everyone is probably going to think I'm a jerk, but I honestly didn't know what to do. Anyway, things are over now and I'm staying with my sister until I gather my bearings. He's been texting me, trying to convince me to reconsider. I honestly feel a little lost because he's the only BF I've ever had and he was such a big part of my life, but I know I made the right choice. Update 2 first, thanks again for all the supportive messages and even the gentle kicks in the pants from people DMing me. I'm reading them all. I'm at my sister's, and she's been an absolute rock, even though I never realized how loud the people above her stomp around at night, so sleep has been optional. The day after I left off, I woke up to about a dozen missed calls and a couple of desperate texts from my ex. Wow, feels weird typing that. He wasn't angry or mean, just clearly not handling it well. My own phone was buzzing with other people, his mom, awkward, his best friend just checking in, and, most uncomfortably, his niece. Let me start there, because that conversation went very differently than I'd expected. She DM'd me on Instagram with a long message. At first I thought it would be some sort of guilt trip, but instead she wrote, "Hey, I hope you're okay, and I understand. You know, you're not the only one who feels this way. Uncle can be thick-headed. No judgment. No matter what happens, I still think you're great." It got me surprisingly teary, and it was the first time all this didn't just feel like grief and humiliation. I didn't want to completely ghost my ex, so I eventually agreed to meet for coffee, very public, very daytime. We had a kind of postmortem conversation, which was easily the hardest thing I've ever sat through. He was subdued and not defensive for the first time in years. He told me that after everyone started congratulating us at the party, he realized just how weird and forced our dynamic had become. The proposal had been planned for ages, because that's what comes next, he said, and he admitted he hoped the spectacle would shock us out of this rut. Instead, seeing the forced smiles in all the pictures, he said, his words, "It felt like we were playing ourselves in a movie I didn't even want to watch anymore." I guess that's a little poetic? Here's the wildest part. He confessed that not long after I left, he called his best friend, let's call him Dan, and admitted everything. Not just what happened with the proposal, but how he'd felt checked out and unsure for months. Apparently, even though he acted like I was springing all this on him, he admitted to Dan that he'd been considering if we should break up, but thought proposing would fix it. Dan, bless him, told him to grow up. I won't pretend that made me feel vindicated or anything. If anything, it just made the last few years of inertia make even less sense. We went around in circles for a while. He apologized, and I could finally say, with no anger, I think we outgrew each other, and that's okay. After that conversation, we switched our focus to the practical stuff. I have most of my important things at my sister's, but we agreed on a day for me to come with her, back up, to collect the last of my things. That went as expected. The apartment felt smaller and sadder than I remembered, but strangely not like home. The only tense moment, discovering the congratulations banner his mom left on the door. We actually both laughed, which felt like the first honest thing we've shared in a long time. So, what else? The family. Yikes. His mom has called me twice, each more polite but increasingly pushy, wanting to clear things up. She says that men sometimes need a long time to learn to show love, and that this is how real relationships are, which only reminded me how deep this mindset runs. When I told her gently that it wasn't about little things, but about both of us being wrong for each other, she got quiet and then asked if I'd still come to her Sunday lunches. I won't. In a wildly unexpected twist, my own parents, whom I expected to be devastated, were relieved. They never said anything, but in the past week, my dad, usually a stoic brick of a man, hugged me and said, "It's hard, but you did the brave thing." I didn't even realize they noticed. And now, the thing that shocked me most, actually, I'm sort of excited. For the first time in over a decade, I've been forced to consider what I like, what I want, and who I might be without this us I've always had as a safety net. That's terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. I've made a list, dumb things like painting my nails neon blue, ordering Indian food every night if I want, or blasting sad girl music without headphones. Big things like maybe moving across town. One of my old school friends sent me a meme about losing the wrong person makes space for the right stuff, and I finally get it. And for those wondering if he and I will ever get back together, I can say now, honestly, no. We are done. I wish him happiness. I hope he finds someone who delights in short answers and sigh hugs and man stuff. But I know, all the way through, that I deserve someone who lights up at me naturally, who wants to be a partner and not just a life accessory. So that's it for now. The engagement party that never was has quietly disappeared from everyone's calendars, and I'll spend this anniversary with my sister and too much wine. I'm sad, yes, and some small part of me still feels like a jerk for causing this chaos. But I know this is the first right step I've taken for myself in a long time. Update 3 first, moving out has been a rolling adventure. I went back with my sister, let's call her Mira, on the agreed day, and we turned the morning into something only slightly harrowing by treating it like a weird game show. What's mine, what's not? I discovered stuff I'd totally forgotten, like my old Polaroid camera from high school, and a set of salt and pepper shakers we got at a street fair in, 2017. It was way less sad than I thought. Actually, it almost felt like I was pulling pieces of myself out from under years of dust. I half expected a meltdown, but mostly, there was a lot of dumb laughter, some emotional hugs, and, most cathartically, a victory lap around the empty closet. The only odd part, my ex was there, hovering just enough to be helpful but giving definite sad golden retriever vibes. He saw me fill a bag with my books and said, "Hey, do you want your Star Wars mug too?" It was such a normal, domestic moment that I felt a wave of nostalgia, but then, out of nowhere, he asked, "Do you remember the trip to the lake when we got stuck in the rain?" Before I could answer, he shook his head and said, "Never mind. Sorry." He kept doing that, glancing at me like he wanted to say more, but always pulling back. I could see he was really struggling to let go of the idea of us, even if he finally understood we were done. Mira and I packed the car, cranked Taylor Swift, and she took an Instagram photo of me holding a box labeled regrets and measuring cups. It was cheesy, but nice. Progress. But here's where things get wild. On our way out of the building, we ran into Dan, the best friend, you remember him. I braced for awkwardness, but he surprised me by pulling me into a big, comforting hug and whispering you did the thing he never could. When Mira stepped away to answer a call, Dan quietly told me my ex finally confessed, in their words, to hiding in the relationship like a warm blanket he no longer wanted to feel. Oof. And then, "Are you sitting down?" Dan asks if we could get coffee, just as friends, to talk. At first, I hesitated, because who needs more emotional somersaults? But Mira nudged me, and honestly, I also needed to not go straight back to my sister's weirdly scented basil apartment. Dan and I ended up at a quirky cafe with mugs the size of soup bowls. Instead of gossiping about my ex, we spent 2 hours reminiscing about college days, sharing terrible dating stories, and debating whether pineapple on pizza is genius or evil. He's team pineapple. I'm undecided. Fight me. He surprised me by saying, "Being with someone that long, you forget what it's even like to be curious about another person, right?" I realized I forgot too. There's a whole planet of people out there who don't already know my favorite order at Taco Bell or that I sleep with one sock on. I was aware of every muscle in my face moving when I laughed. It's weird, rediscovering yourself around someone who isn't woven into every habit and memory. As for my ex, since move out, he's texted me intermittently, sometimes late night stuff like "hope you're okay" or "saw your blue nails on Insta, nice." It's oddly gentle. He's apparently been going to therapy, which his niece, who, side note, is way cooler than I ever gave her credit for, told me via an unexpected Snapchat. She started checking in on me about once a week, inviting me to join her and a few friends for trivia at a bar downtown. I went. I didn't win, but I did decide that new beginnings taste a lot like cheap cider and curly fries. My parents have kept up with their low-key cheerleading. Dad's new thing is offering to dog sit the neighbor's corgi just to lure me home for visits. And Mom dragged me to an art class where we painted tiny landscapes and she quietly dropped one into my overnight bag after. On the back she wrote, "For your new walls, wherever they are." Designing this new, single phase of my life feels like breaking in a pair of boots, stiff and uncomfortable, but also kind of thrilling. The former in-laws, his mom left me a voicemail. She finally gave up calling directly, mostly just hoping I'll come watch her prune roses in the spring. I told her, genuinely, not as a power move, that I'm grateful she was family, but we're all better off letting the dust settle. She seemed to understand, which was a relief. So here's the most unexpected news. Dan and I have developed an unlikely, platonic friendship. I know what Reddit's going to think, but truly, it's nothing more than someone who knows what this breakup cost, and who can gently remind me that I'm a human being and not just a complicated aftermath. Turns out, when you remove yourself from the role you were supposed to play, the world doesn't end. It gets much weirder, sure, but also more interesting. I signed a short lease on a tiny studio across town, a place with too much sunlight, mismatched furniture off Facebook Marketplace, and an espresso machine that makes the absolute worst coffee but is mine. The first night I slept there, Mira brought over pizza and we sat on the floor, eating straight from the box, surrounded by moving boxes and the echo of our shared laughter. I wish I could wrap this up with a declaration of self-love or an epic new romance, but honestly, I'm just existing, and it's 80% scary and 20% wild, and sometimes I still reach for the wrong toothbrush or expect a goodnight hug out of habit. But I'm learning that you can outgrow people and places, and you're allowed to try again, awkwardly, joyfully, messily. I still feel a pang when I see something that reminds me of us. But now, more often than not, it's a gentle ache, not regret, not bitterness, just gratitude that I had the guts to ask for more. Here's to whatever happens next. Maybe I'll try hot yoga, maybe I'll apply for that job with the crazy commute. Maybe, next time someone calls me beautiful, it'll be because they just want to, not because I asked. Update 4. Let's start with the weirdest, most cinematic moment of my life to date. 2 Fridays ago, I got off work late, too late for the bus, so at about 9:30 p.m. I was trudging home with takeout pad thai and a scowl. Rain again, thank you, climate change. My new neighborhood is artsy and a little sketchy after dark, and as I reached my building, I saw someone sitting on the stoop under the busted porch light. It was my ex. Yeah, I know. At first, I thought he'd got the move-out date wrong or lost his charger or something. But he stood up, holding a dog leash. Turns out, Dan had roped him into dog sitting for a rescue mutt named Tofu. Side note, best dog ever. I thought maybe you'd let me say goodbye, he said, and even though there was no fireworks or big tears, it was enough to take me by surprise. We talked for maybe 20 minutes, me awkwardly eating cold noodles while Tofu tried to climb into my lap. He didn't ask for a second chance. He didn't cry. He said he was moving in with some friends across town, and that therapy had made him realize that what I needed wasn't a chore, it was normal. He even laughed a little, saying, at least one of us finally figured out what we wanted. There was nothing left to dredge up, so we hugged, brief, friendly, supervised by Tofu, and said goodbye properly. He looked lighter, so did I. After that was the oddest sense of relief, like shutting a book you've been stuck on for years. I set my phone down and didn't feel that itch to wait for a text. I let myself be sad for a night, and then, for the first time, I woke up and just started thinking ahead. Dan and I are still pals, to everyone's surprise, including ours. In fact, Mira and I have started a sort of ritual. Every Wednesday, the three of us hit open mic night at this divey bar, think lava lamps and a guy with a ukulele who only knows 3 chords. We don't discuss the past. Instead, we argue about bagel rankings and worst first dates, and last Wednesday, I went on stage with Mira and we sang Jolene, badly, but without fear. Progress. Even wilder, at that same bar, I met someone. Not a romance yet, but it's officially the first time in my adult life I've had a conversation with a new guy without the "what would my boyfriend think" filter. He's a friend of a friend, graphic designer, tells the worst puns, allergic to cats. We're texting. It's not electric, it's just sane, and low pressure, and that honestly feels better than any spark. Outside of attempted socializing, my little studio is starting to look like a home. Mira convinced me to buy a 6-foot rubber plant. I've named it Salazar, and so far it's thriving despite my best efforts. The walls are slowly filling up with tiny paintings, thrift shop finds, and Polaroids. Last weekend, my niece and I built IKEA shelves. She's almost as bad at following instructions as I am, but somehow, they're still standing. She told me you seem different, like you breathe differently now. Kids, man. Family-wise, my ex's mom gave up on guilt trips and instead texted a simple "you'll always be welcome here, if you ever change your mind." I took a deep breath and wrote back, "Thank you, but I'm building something new for myself." She responded with a heart emoji. I'm oddly at peace with her. Every old relationship doesn't need to be a ghost. For the first time in my adult life, I'm alone in the most dazzling, terrifying way. I do the food shopping for one. I fall asleep watching old sitcoms with nobody shushing me about the laugh track. Yes, I still sometimes reach for his hoodie on chilly mornings, and yes, there are days when hearing a couple laugh in public makes my stomach drop. But more and more often, I feel light. I signed up for hot yoga, hilariously bad at it. I accepted an interview for a job across the city and actually got it. Hello, new commute, goodbye, awkward elevator rides with ex-coworkers who know my entire drama. Mira and I road tripped to a flea market last weekend and I bought a neon yellow toaster on a dare. I keep it on the counter as a reminder, you can always choose the weird option. I expected breakups to feel like tearing pages out of a diary. In reality, it's like clearing a desk for something brand new. There are aftershocks, of grief, of nostalgia, of embarrassment. But there's also giddy anticipation. The first night I felt truly okay. I poured a glass of terrible boxed wine and made a playlist called "Whoa, Is This Freedom?" Then I danced alone in my living room, just because I could, just because nothing is shaping me but me anymore. Some small, strange updates. Dan started dating again. He texted me for advice, which was hilarious and humbling, and underlined, for both of us, how absolutely, soul-restoringly done I am with my ex and our old circles. Ex's niece is full on team me, and calls Mira and I her big city aunts. Her boyfriend's still adorable. The blue nail polish has become a thing. I get more compliments on my cheap neon nails than I ever did from my ex. Go figure, I don't know what comes next, maybe an awkward first date, maybe a heartbreak shitpost, maybe an art show with my terrible landscapes. But I do know this, I'm finally not waiting for someone to look up and notice I'm there. I notice me, and if the right person ever does show up, he'll love the person I'm finally becoming. Messy kitchen, yoga fail, and all. Update 5. Well. Turns out when you think the story's winding down, life tosses you a few plot twists and then throws confetti all over your carefully swept floor. So grab a kettle chip and buckle up, Reddit, because the last few weeks have been way more eventful than I expected. Some wild, some unexpectedly wholesome, and one absolutely bonkers. Let's start with a completely unforeseen phone call. My usually MIA cousin sent me a selfie from an airport in another country, holding a sign that said "You're doing great." Backstory, she's an expat, and we haven't seen each other face to face in almost a decade. Apparently she's been following my big girl at large saga through my mom and thought I needed a breakup Mooney intervention. Bless her impulsive heart, she bought a ticket home and showed up at Myra's the next night with 2 bottles of suspiciously labeled foreign whiskey, 3 pounds of Turkish delight, and what she claimed was wisdom harvested from the world's dumbest men. We immediately fell into that rare, chaotic vibe you only get with someone who loved you before puberty. She told saga after saga, asked me about her Belgian ex or how she once dated someone who believed in time travel for plants, and for 3 whole days, the only time I wasn't laughing was when we ugly cried at videos of baby sloths. Mira joined the fun, and before I knew it, our little studio was packed with borrowed air mattresses, atrocious snacks, and aggressively supportive notes stuck to my bathroom mirror. But of course, chaos stalks. The first Friday my cousin was back, my new, platonic friendship group, this includes Dan, my cousin, and a few ringers from trivia, tried a night at one of those adult trampoline parks, because why not? Here's where it gets nuts. Mid-bounce, Dan takes a spill, and somehow in the mayhem, I end up stuck in a pit of foam cubes next to a charming stranger with riotous hair, a cast on his left arm, and a sly grin. He makes a joke about us being kindred idiots. We spend the whole reset break swapping bad stunt stories and, cue the sitcom slow zoom, he asks me out for coffee. His name is Malik. It's the first time anyone not connected to my previous life has done that in years. Wild, right? It felt less like butterflies and more like someone opening a window in a stuffy room. Malik and I go out, just coffee at first, the sort of awkward, what are you looking for chat that feels like an amateur improv show. There was one glorious moment, he asked me what I'm most proud of lately, and I blurted, learning to just be in a room and not shrink. He grinned, said, here's to not shrinking, and clinked his mug to mine. I admit I swooned a touch. Meanwhile, the ripple effects of the breakup kept coming. My ex actually emailed me the other day, an honest-to-God email, so I don't disrupt your phone, just wanted to say thanks for the closure, hope Tofu's pictures make you smile sometimes. I realized that not only was I totally unrumpled by hearing from him, but I actually smiled, all that dread has truly burned off. He's apparently thriving with 2 new roommates and a part-time dog. I hope his couch is more comfortable than his proposals. My old in-laws circle basically handled my absence by replacing me? Which sounds weirder than it is. His mom dropped off the world except for the occasional forward of a meme, saw this blue nail polish. His niece, though, has all but adopted Mira and me. She invited us to meet her for family game night and introduced us to her new friend group, which includes, wait for it, a competitive jigsaw puzzling champion and someone who makes artisanal licorice. She pulled me aside and said, you know you always deserve this, right? People who choose you. Work life? Changing, fast. The new job is equal parts exhilarating and mind-bending. I'm still not used to coworkers who don't know everything about my personal history. I prepped for Small Talk Olympics, but instead, I ended up on the volunteer committee for an upcoming city festival. Guess who's helping man the mural wall and coordinate karaoke? Hint, it's me, already making ridiculous song requests, and then, a tiny but major thing. One night, feeling both peaceful and brave, I sent out an invite for a housewarming. The old me would have panicked at the idea of being the center of anything. Now, with Malik, my cousin, Mira, Dan, and a smattering of new friends, we packed into my patchwork studio. There were dollar store banners, dumb hats, a tiny dance battle, and at one point I had both a slice of pineapple pizza and neon blue nails. We toasted to starting over, sparkling water, and more weird stories next year. Someone asked what I was most looking forward to, and I said, whatever I haven't even thought of yet. Before the night ended, when everyone was leaving and I faced the classic, echo why post-party quiet, Mira just hugged me and whispered, I knew you'd land on your feet. I didn't believe her before. Now I do. So, to sum up what's new since the last wild installment, I've got baby sloths, a cousin on a layover from life, a possible crush on a guy from a foam pit, blue polish that's basically my trademark, and for the first time in a decade, an apartment that feels like it's expanding instead of shrinking. I don't know what comes next, a real romance? A new friend group mishap? Maybe a disastrous karaoke duet at the festival, but for once, I'm not bracing for bad news. I'm just excited. I really hope someone out there reads this and realizes, the more you clear out what doesn't fit, the more room there is for magic you never knew you'd want. I got my spark back. Turns out, The only permission I ever needed to chase it was my own.